Alright, third time's the charm. Another year, another tier list for everything I've watched for the first time this year. 2024 was a bit touch and go for me with a fair few life events, so not as many published reviews this time around the sun. However, as always, still plenty being watched. If there's anything you'd want to see more of from me in 2025, or if you want something new, please let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to hear what people are wanting. So, if you've seen one of these before, you know the drill. Anything that I watch for the first time this year, as I said, gets ranked. That includes films and television series alike. If it's a rewatch, I don't tier it. We're just going to be moving straight through, pretty much in the order I watched and logged everything on my Letterboxd this year. These rankings should line up pretty closely with what I rated things there, and my comments should be similar. So, if you want sneak previews of these sorts of tier lists, or just want to talk movies with me on the coolest social media in town, find me over there, Roulette Films. Happy to follow back and check out your 4 favorites too. Always down to learn what viewers like. So anyway, let's get going. Blue Beetle. I had a really good time with this one. The action was dynamic, and I thought it had a lot of fun visuals throughout the movie. It was an above-average superhero movie that did its job and did it well, and I'm honestly a bit bummed that it's part of an essentially dead universe. Scavenger's Reign. I found this really fascinating. It was full of poignant moments and really great visuals. It was a strong showing for adult animation that has some heavy themes, and I'm sad I won't be able to see more of it, as I don't think there's going to be a season 2. So check it out if you're at all into that somewhat more eerie side of sci-fi. True Detective Night Country. I was high on this initially, but it frankly let me down. We all know I'm a bit loose for a good mystery, and this was shaping up to be one, but ultimately it let me down with its resolution, or seemingly lack thereof. I'd be hard-pressed to suggest this one in spite of solid acting performances and the usual HBO production quality. I was wrong here. Dang. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. A lovely little appetizer of Wes Anderson, hitting all the notes you'd want and expect for a Wes short. Cumberbatch does an excellent job in his role, and it's honestly just a very tight and pleasant story. Good stuff. The Proposal. I enjoyed this surprisingly more than I thought that I would. However, you can definitely see the startings of the prototypical Ryan Reynolds personality begin to take hold for a few moments here. But for the most part, though, I think he played his role well, and it does stand out for most of what I know Ryan Reynolds for. Overall, I thought this was light and pretty fun. Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Not my cup of tea. Like I said in my review, a ton of telling and very rarely any showing. This felt like a letdown in terms of its visuals as well as its actual narrative structure and character choices. Things seem to have deviated from the book for no real discernible and valuable reason, and despite the best efforts of the actors, this was not very good in my opinion. Wedding Crashers. 1,000,000% a product of its time, which is both a compliment and a dig. There are some very predatory characters in this, but then again, Rachel McAdams is in this. Therefore, it is still good. Dune Part 2. This is cinema. If you disagree, then I don't know what to tell you. The visuals, the performances, the scoring, anything about it is the reason that people go to the movies to begin with. This is top tier. Hook. I did not have any idea that this was a Spielberg project until I noticed the quintessential backlighting that he does, as well as that blocking and framing that he just makes look so effortless. This is just the right amount of camp, in my opinion, and contains strong performances all around. Oldboy. Incredibly tough film to watch in the aisle seat on an airplane, but that's my fault. This, along with its iconic bits already being known to me, probably took some of its impact away from me. Nonetheless, I still felt it was very solid, though I understand this ranking might be seen as a little bit controversial. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. This hit me like an absolute truck. This little bastard is simply too cute. This is a really endearing and wholesome experience of a film, and I'm just happy I finally got around to watching it and being able to connect to it. Ricky Stenicki. Surprisingly hilarious. Cena and Zac Efron are great in this, and both have several standout moments. This feels like a natural next step from those questionable 2000s dude bro comedies like Wedding Crashers. Really good stuff, in my opinion. Death Trap. Do I even need to say it? It's a murder mystery about murdering over a mystery. Come on. Michael Caine, Christopher Reeve, Diane Cannon, all of them chewing so much scenery. Mwah. Looper. Some surprisingly grim concepts in this one. Rian Johnson continues to surprise me with how creative he can be in seemingly overtreaded areas. I didn't love Looper, but I definitely liked it a lot. The ending was fascinating to me, and I could absolutely see how this movie propelled Rian Johnson's career. 27 Dresses. Really, really charming. Marsden and Heigl have a really great chemistry brought to life through the rom-com groundwork that is laid by Aline Brosh McKenna, and this movie, like all good rom-coms, uses your expectations to its advantage, and it is a classic for a reason. Invincible Season 2. I enjoyed it thoroughly, especially as I had recently read the comics earlier in the year. However, it can feel a bit stale in its animation at times, especially compared to some of the artwork from the comics that it is inspired by. Overall, the story is good, and it's nice to see it fleshed out beyond the panels on the pages, but I can't help but feel like Season 2 could have been a bit more. Moneyball. On the one hand, great movie. On the other hand, its consequences for various sports have been terrible in a lot of ways. So I'm in a tough spot here. In the end, ironically, Moneyball for me just lacks the certain intangibles that would have me rank it as highly as most other people might. I know that's kind of a weak argument, but I still do consider it great, just not that great. Game Night. Perfection. Okay, I know it's not a perfect movie, but it's the perfect time of a movie. Truly, I can think of nothing I dislike about this comedic masterpiece. I was laughing pretty much throughout the entire runtime. I was also, once again, blessed with the presence of Rachel McAdams. Also, Winnie the Bish. God, everyone is so good in this movie. I just love it. The Usual Suspects. Another movie that has been filter-fed through me by my exposure to the cultural zeitgeist over the years. Due to this, it just didn't hit as hard as it probably should or could have. Still, I found watching it all unfold really interesting, and certain scenes felt excellent. Some super compelling stuff at times, and I can absolutely understand why it's seen as the classic that it is. Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials. If Divergent was the movie that sunk the young adult craze for good, this movie might have been the one to cripple it just before that. Every single cliche you can think of as a line of dialogue is in this movie. It's almost impressive, really, but mostly painful. Madagascar: Escape to Africa. A shame how much more interested in the side characters I tend to be than in the main four. Still, the hijinks are entertaining enough, I suppose. Also, Alec Baldwin is in this? The Boss Baby? Wow. But really, I'd prefer more penguins and grandma as opposed to the actual main characters. So, yeah. Shogun. Really awesome. At times, understated but never underdone. This scratches that Game of Thrones itch that has been sorely bothering me since a few seasons before Game of Thrones ended. This is a strong recommend for me, and as Bong Joon-ho has said, do not let the 1-inch wall of subtitles stop you from experiencing amazing art. Blue Eye Samurai. Yet another amazing story in feudal Japan, though this one is much more visceral and action-heavy. There's a lot of stellar animation here, and it's another great entry for the adult portion of the animation genre, so that everyone can maybe stop pointing at very obviously children's movies when they tweet about animation being cinema. Seriously though, it's worth checking out for the sake of the cover of the Metallica song alone. Bottoms. I had a lot of fun with this one. Io and Rachel are both great leads and play super well off of each other. It also seems to capture the modern high school scene very well and keeps things super entertaining, utilizing its absurdity to an increasing degree as the movie progresses. It has a really fun climax and just third act in general, and that makes it very, very memorable to me. Godzilla -1. This movie actually exploded my old TV in my old apartment. It was also insanely awesome beyond that. I love me a good monster movie, especially when those monster movies manage to accomplish the impossible task of making the human characters actually compelling. I think this movie has a lot to say beyond it just being really cool in the first place, and it's amazing. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Just a very good legacy sequel. Like I said in my original review, I can absolutely see this spanning a new trilogy as it does plenty to establish itself while keeping solid but not overbearing connections to the original Apes films as well as the more recent Caesar entries. So it's overall great in my opinion. Tuesday. This came out of nowhere and absolutely wrecked me emotionally. It's a very basic story and theme, but I really enjoyed the intimate and pretty original execution of it. It's just a very well-made and personal story, and one of my favorite things I was lucky enough to see this year. Plus, even more than that, the cast happened to be at my screening and did a nice little Q&A after the show, which was so cool. Turning Red. This was fun and emotionally resonant for me. Honestly, I'd put it higher than Luca, personally, and maybe it competes with Soul. It's not quite on the level of an instant Pixar classic in my mind, but they can't all be and even being near that level is an honor enough. Also, I love that boy band. They got some catchy stuff. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Zemeckis is goated for a reason, and this is yet another amongst his many exhibits. Really, really amazing stuff done here, both on the screen and behind it, to make this movie come together in the first place. I've said for others on this list that I can understand why they're classics, but with this one, I believe that it's a classic. The Iron Claw. Oh boy, more emotional devastation. I mean, talk about getting hit like a truck. This hit me like 3 trucks, with each one of them blindsiding me while driving faster than the last. This is incredible, tragic, heart-wrenching, beautiful. Efron is a serious actor in this and deserves a lot of love for his performance. Ex Machina. Wow. Yet another incredibly tough watch for the aisle airplane seat. I gotta start pre-screening these or something. As for the movie, though, really interesting, eerie, and thought-provoking, and Oscar Isaac is just really good in his role, like excellent. Just great, in my opinion. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. The dialogue in the story, very much not good, but Black Manta is such a hater that I love every second of his time on screen, and I couldn't help but be charmed by the buddy cop dynamic the movie provides. It's not good, but it is fun enough. The Boys, Season 4. A tiring experience where you're waiting for something to happen only to realize it's going to happen next season. We don't really change anything other than the net worth of the creators and the main cast for like 95% of the season. Still, it's solid enough, I suppose. The Bear, Season 3. Somehow more blatant than The Boys in its commitment to not make any sort of progress in terms of its character or story. Outside of Io's directorial episode, I really did not enjoy a ton about this looking back on it, and at very many points it felt like a chore for me and my girlfriend to get through. This was not bad, but nearly felt not worth my time. Hitman. I might be in love with Glenn Powell. He's great in this, and it's just such a fun premise to see get played out with a pretty talented cast. So really, this was just an enjoyable movie that I'm very glad that I saw. Deadpool and Wolverine. I think, and maybe this is controversial, but I think Deadpool is just not the character for me. He personally never really seems to have any stakes that I can connect with, and it just makes the film feel hard to enjoy or immerse myself in. Jackman makes Wolverine work really well, and Reynolds has a lot of talent on display here, but it just doesn't really do it for me in terms of the film as a whole. However, the movie is actually really funny when it isn't leaning on pop culture or modern zeitgeists for its punchlines. Borderlands. Ugh. I feel sick. This is a war crime. Eli Roth should be tried at the Hague. Alien Romulus. Hell yeah. This feels like Alien. This feels like gritty sci-fi. Some really interesting set pieces in this that were super entertaining, and I think it does a lot for the franchise, both in terms of future setup and nods to the original. However, it does overdo the nods to originals at certain points. Also, that thing at the end? Yuck. The Abyss. This James Cameron guy really likes water, huh? But anyway, Cameron once again proves that he has immense sauce when it comes to directing action sequences. If only he wasn't so ahead of his time when it comes desired visual effects versus available CGI at the time. Beetlejuice. Honestly, pretty fun. I love Halloween and this sort of thing, so I am definitely biased toward it, but I had a great time in the theater. There were lots of fun sets and costume design and just silly, goofy, classic Tim Burton stuff. It's not the original, but really is anything. It's still very good. Chicago. Damn. Now this is a musical about the public perception of morally vile characters and false idolatry by the media that have propped them up. Cell Block Tango also goes absurdly hard. The Holdovers. Poignant. It has chemistry between its leads, and the story and message are charming enough that I can really see myself coming back to this each winter. It's just very, very good and easy to like. The Wild Robot. This is a great use of the recent trend toward more creative and liberal animation styles that we've been seeing in the mainstream more and more since Spider-Verse. Legitimately, this is mesmerizing to look at for a large majority of its runtime, with surprisingly touching moments as well. I saw it on a whim, and it turned out to be an amazing experience. I would suggest it quite strongly. Joker, Folie à Deux. Damn. Now, this is not a musical about the public perception of morally vile characters and the false idolatry by the media that's propped them up. These songs all suck. Lady Gaga, I am so sorry. The Fall Guy. Ryan Gosling, my glorious king, my Pookie. The only thing better than you is you in a movie about making movies that's dialed up to 11 at all times in the most endearing and absurd ways possible. I'd watch 1 million Fall Guys for you, Ryan. Totally killer. I really like this. It's a twinge spooky, twinge whodunit sort of movie. At times it feels like a spiritual successor to Scream, but with obviously much more high concept plot points. Still though, it manages to be a lot of fun. Dr. Sleep. Wow. Rebecca Ferguson, you are, yeah. Some incredibly tense stuff in here with lots of fascinating expansions of things from The Shining. I have not read the books, so this is all new to me and very compelling. Yeah, I oscillated between thinking it was fascinating, thinking it was frightening, and then just being completely captivated by it. We Live in Time. Really well performed, but not quite as emotionally devastating as I had anticipated it being, though I suppose this could be a product of my own expectations. Also, the ending of the film feels rather abrupt, at least to me. Still, though, the ride leading up to that point was very good. Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. In the month of November, I ran a half marathon. I also watched this. This was the more painful activity for me by approximately 12 miles. Zack Snyder has a personal vendetta against me with every film he makes, and they exist merely to make me suffer. Transformers 1. What's up with kids' cartoon movies and making the previously one-dimensional bad guys, insanely understandable? I am not a Transformers dude by any stretch of the imagination, but this was really good. Really, everyone was great. The action and visuals were super solid. I was just a little too good at hearing Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime, though. Kung Fu Panda 4. This is not quite on the level of the original 3 Kung Fu Pandas, which is a very high standard, but it's certainly very good. Awkwafina was also not as bad as I was led to believe in this. She's totally fine as the secondary character to Po. Like all the Kung Fu Panda movies, there are a lot of really interesting visuals throughout this movie, and it has some great uses of the series villains, in my opinion. However, I did definitely miss the presence of the Furious 5 during this. Oh well, it was still pretty good. Trap. This seems to rapidly oscillate between being intensely campy and just being plain old intense. However, it seems to do this really well. However, it is difficult to tell if this is actually intentional. Also, beside all of that, M. Night might win Dad of the Year for doing this entire movie pretty much to promote his daughter's musical career. That's really cool of him. And regardless, this was a fun enough movie and I had a good time watching it. Muppets Most Wanted. This goes insanely hard. I dare call it the perfect enjoyable movie. It's funny, it has heart, it's got music, it's charming, it nails every single thing that it tries to do. Really, the only critique I can make of this movie is that it contains Ricky Gervais. Wicked. I really like this. I wasn't fortunate enough to see the original Broadway production with the original cast, but I did see the show on Broadway earlier in the year, and I think I preferred the film version of the songs to the production that I saw. It has some shortcomings as a movie, with certain scenes looking a bit washed out or flat when they ideally shouldn't, but there is just so much more that this movie gets right that I really don't mind those issues as much as others seem to. So, very good in my opinion. Les Mis. I surprisingly did not mind the constant singing as much as I thought I would. Also, just in general, I enjoyed this movie much more than I expected to. I will say, though, I think that I nearly choked on air or snapped my neck from tonal whiplash when they introduced the innkeeper characters. Twisters. Glenn Powell has that it factor, man. Twisters is not high art, but it is absolutely something you can sit down with, immerse yourself in, and connect to. It also feels big, yet personal, in all of the right ways. I'm feeling it, and I want to chase it. The Penguin. More excellence from HBO, as expected. The Penguin gives us a character who you love to hate, feel disgusted by, loathe. Everything a series about a villain should do, the Penguin does. It's not afraid to be despicable and daring, and its cast is consistently bringing its A-game to heighten every emotion the script wants to touch on in every single episode. Gladiator 2. Not quite the classic that the original is, but it's still supremely entertaining. Every scene in the Colosseum is certainly one to remember. And while it does retread a lot of plot points from the original, a bit too much for my liking, it does grant an appropriate amount of spectacle and variety to make the journey worthwhile. Red 1. It's really, really dumb, but I think it knows that and leans into it a bit. I also am somewhat of a sucker for this sort of mythology stuff, so I could be biased, but anyway, I don't think Red 1 or its main cast are taking itself as seriously as everyone seems to believe it is, so it still gave me a fun time. And I guess I'm a Red 1 apologist now. Nosferatu. Very, very, very saucy. I'm a fan of the Dracula original novel and was excited to see it translated to screen by Eggers, and he did not disappoint with the visuals. It's a super unique interpretation of the classical story that hits on all those plot beats, but definitely leans more into the intimacy of vampirism than the horror of it, which is not to my personal preference, but it is still done amazingly well. This is just great, great stuff. Juror number 2, the final entry. Literally watched this one like yesterday, as you'll see from my retrofitting addition to this list in like a minute, but honestly, I really like this one. For most courtroom dramas, from my point of view, there always seems to be this naivete that either justice or the legal system will prevail, but Juror number 2 really makes a meal out of presenting you with a situation where there really is no good resolution, and it leaves you wondering if there even is true justice in the scenario it gives to you. It's incredibly well acted by Colette and Holt in particular, and a classic high-powered dad movie to end the year on a very high note. So, that does it for me. Let me know what you thought of my rankings in the comments below. Are you floored by my poor taste? Shocked that a movie reviewer with a YouTube channel in year 3 still hasn't seen so many classics? Was there anything you were hoping I might cover this year that I didn't? Let me know. I'm always happy to chat with you guys. I don't know if there's going to be any change in direction in terms of this channel in 2025, but if that's what people want, then that's what I'll be happy to do. I'm always happy to chat with and take feedback from you guys. Anyway, I got to see a lot of cool stuff this year and had a lot of great experiences. I hope your 2024 was good too, and that next year will be even better to you. So, until next year.